News now begins in west of the continent, where the Nigerian Senate has removed Senator Ali Ndume as the chief whip, replacing him with the Senator Tahir Monguno. The change followed the directive issued in a letter by the national chairman of the party, Umar Ganduje, and National Secretary Senator Bashir Adebola. The letter was read during plenary, and the request was put to a voice vote by Senate President Godswill Akpabio, receiving loud affirmation from all APC senators. The APC accused Ndume of making hurtful comments against President Bola Tinubu's administration. In a recent interview, Ndume alleged that some ministers and lawmakers could no longer reach Tinubu to relay the prevailing economic hardship and hunger at the country. Justice James Omotocho of the Federal High Court in Abuja on Wednesday nullified the impeachment of Philip Shuaibu as the Deputy Governor of Edo State. In his ruling, Justice Omotocho ordered Shuaibu's reinstatement, citing the Edo State House of Assembly's failure to follow due process in the impeachment. The court also invalidated the appointment of Shuaibu's replacement. Justice Omotocho held that the allegations used to justify the impeachment did not constitute gross misconduct and were legally untenable. He further directed the Inspector General of Police to provide Shuaibu with the necessary security to resume office and perform his duties until the end of his tenure. In the meantime, the Edo State House of Assembly has appealed the Federal High Court judgment overturning the impeachment of former Deputy Governor Philip Shuaibu. Now the Assembly filed a stay of execution pending appeal. Shuaibu was impeached in April 2024 following allegations of misconduct, including perjury and leaking government secret. He was removed from office by a vote of 18-1. The impeachment followed a report by a 7-man investigative panel. Governor Godwin Obaseki appointed Omobayo Marvelous Godwins as his new deputy. The appeal seeks to reinstate Shuaibu's impeachment, which was set aside by the Federal High Court. The case is still ongoing, and the outcome is pending. And for more on this, I am joined by our correspondent, Marvelous Abomanu, who was at the court during the session. Marvelous, glad to have you join me. Good afternoon.
Blessed afternoon.
All right, you were in court while this ruling was given. Just give us, a sense of what played out in court.
Anyway, it is a mixed feeling for Philip Shuaibu today because Justice James Omotocho just reinstated him as the Deputy Governor of Edo State, and the same James Omotocho also struck out his case, challenging the candidacy of Asuo Ighodalo as the PDP flag bearer on the Edo State election. Now, talking about his reinstatement, James Omotocho held that his impeachment was illegal and therefore directed that all his salary and allowances from April the 8th when he was impeached to the day his tenure will elapse should be restored to him, and therefore he gave an order of perpetual injunction for the governor of Edo State and the Edo State House of Assembly, to allow the governor to perform his function as the deputy governor to perform his function. And also lastly, he also ordered the Inspector General of Police to reinstate the former deputy governor, who is now reinstated, his security details to be brought back to him. That's what the case is for now, although the Edo State House of Assembly has filed an appeal or stay of execution challenging this particular judgment. Then, on the other hand, the Philip Shuaibu already was challenging the candidacy of Asuo Ighodalo, saying that he forged his voter's card. But in his ruling, Justice James Omotocho said that the case has become statute barred because it was a pre-election matter, and that they failed to prove within all reasonable doubt that he forged his voter's card, and so therefore struck out the case. So currently we are waiting the decision of the court on Yaya Bello's case. They are having that case right now. You recall that the last time the judge ordered that Bello should appear in court today to take his plea, and we're expecting today that the ruling by EFCC that Bello's counsel should be docked. So it's today we'll know whether he'll be docked or not and what happens to the case. So the case is still ongoing.
All right, thank you so much, Marvelous Abomanu, for giving us, a detailed account of what transpired in court. We'll keep tabs with you to see how this turns out. I'm also joined by a legal practitioner, Dennis Osaratin. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
All right, let me kick off by asking, first of all, what's your impression or what do you make of the verdict, in court regarding reinstating Philip Shuaibu as the Deputy Governor of Edo State?
Of course, let me say very quickly that we are yet to see the certified true copy of the judgment. But if anything, the press is to go by, I'm aware that the House of Assembly had instead a process of appeal, and they've also filed a motion for stay. So in the interim, what is important is that the House of Assembly has gone ahead to appeal, and Godswill Akpabio remains the Deputy Governor of Edo State.
Let me go to a component, raised in court, an element raised in court, which is gross misconduct. Yeah. Why do you think the court found the allegations against Shuaibu legally untenable?
Yeah, for me, that question is a matter of jurisdiction. What amounts to just gross misconduct lies within the remit of the House of Assembly. It is what they define it as that amounts to gross misconduct. Of course, I don't want to begin to preempt what the Court of Appeal will do, and we'll allow the Court of Appeal to do justice to that matter. But I'm aware, looking at judicial precedent of the subject matter, that what amounts to gross misconduct is the definition given to it by the House of Assembly and no one else, including the courts.
Well, we're not, strangers to these rancor, between the governor, and that's Godwin Obaseki, and his deputy, Philip Shuaibu. Now, this verdict of Justice Omotosho regarding reinstatement of Philip Shuaibu as deputy governor in Edo State, what would it imply or mean for Edo State currently?
For me, it means nothing, because as far as I'm concerned, the House of Assembly has taken a legal step of applying for stay of execution. Until the appeal is determined, Godwin Akpabio remains deputy governor of Edo State and nothing more pretentious.
Well, you foresee an appeal, from the loyalists to Godwin Obaseki. Is that right?
I said the House of Assembly has initiated the move to appeal, and they've since applied for a stay of execution of this judgment. And until that appeal is determined, nothing is in the offing for Philip Shuaibu. Godwin Akpabio remains the de facto deputy governor of Edo State, and the state is very calm, and people are very, very, very expectant of what the Court of Appeal will do on this matter.
Now, talking about the House of Assembly in Edo State, what legal grounds might Edo State House of Assembly use, to support the appeal against the Federal High Court's judgment?
I've told you that the Supreme Court have even defined it in a plethora of cases, that what amounts to gross misconduct is as defined by the House of Assembly and no one else. That is within their remit. And that's going to be one of the issues that are going to canvass at the Court of Appeal. I don't want to start preempting what the Court of Appeal will do, but I can tell you off the cuff that gross misconduct is as defined by the House of Assembly. So if they believe that Philip Shuaibu's conduct and shenanigans amounts to gross misconduct, so be it. No one else can begin to interfere as to how they arrive at that conclusion. It is within their remit as defined by the Constitution, and that is the law as of today.
Now, looking at the politics playing out in Nigeria, if we take a look at, Edo State, is on the platter. We also have a case in River State where, the current governor is having some crisis sort of with the former governor. When it comes to court litigations, the people are at the center of, bearing the brunt. As a legal practitioner, what would you recommend in agreeing to a solution so that there can be development and then progress in a state, as against series of court injunctions back and forth?
Yeah, clearly, the case between Rivers and Edo is like comparing apples and oranges. They are clearly different in terms of
no. If you get me correctly, just to point out, I was saying it from the point of governance and progress in the state, where you have rancor and fracas. How best can parties work together to ensure the people who are at the receiving end, receive the events of democracy?
Yeah, for me, what is playing in Edo State clearly is so a few disgruntled politicians trying to bring down the rules simply because they cannot get what they are looking for. So it has to do with governance, it has to do with the interests of the state. Just a few, a handful of politicians who just want to bring down the roof, who just want to get what they're looking for desperately through the back door. And they are fortunate that they're trying to deploy the judiciary to see if they can accentuate their inordinate desire. But I'm glad with some of the outcomes right now, it still clearly shows that the judiciary remains the last hope of the common man. And we are very pleased with what has happened, even with regards to the dismissal of the cases of Philip Shuaibu.
Now, what legal recourse, does Philip Shuaibu have? For instance, if the appeal by the Edo State House of Assembly, for instance, is successful, and then the impeachment is reinstated, just perhaps.
Yeah, for me, Philip Shuaibu's remedy is for him to go and wait for his times, to probably wait for another time where he can probably run as governor for Edo State. But for now, the courts have decided his fate. He will have to wait. The appeal will go all the way to Supreme Court. The House of Assembly has applied for stay of execution of this judgment. He will have to be patient, and he should wait for the outcome of these appeals before he begins to bring down the roof.
Well, and wait we shall. Thank you so much for your insight on the news. Dennis Osiretin, legal practitioner, many thanks once again.
Thank you very much for having me. God bless Edo State.
Let's also tell you that 13 states have fixed dates for local government elections in the aftermath of last Thursday's Supreme Court judgments, which prohibited federal allocation to council being administered by caretaker committees. Now, the states that have commenced council poll preparations include Kaduna, Kogi, Bauchi, Katsina, Osun, Enugu, Benue, Rivers, Jigawa, Imo, Kebbi, Abia, and Anambra states. On Tuesday, the Kaduna State Independent Electoral Commission scheduled the council poll for October 19, 2024. The Supreme Court had declared it unconstitutional for state governors to hold funds allocated for the local government councils. And the judgment delivered by Justice Emmanuel Ajim, the seven-man panel held that the 774 local government councils in the country should manage their funds themselves. The Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria has praised the Supreme Court's ruling granting financial autonomy to local government. Now, the institute believes the decision will boost development at the grassroots levels. In a statement by the acting registrar and chief executive of the institute, Folake Osho, CITN urged local government chairmen and officials to support the upcoming tax reforms proposed by the Presidential Committee on Tax and Fiscal Policy Reforms. The statement also said the ruling is a positive development that promises improved governance and development. It adds that the autonomy is expected to lead to better service delivery, improved economic activities, and reduce rural-urban migration and criminality. The CITN called for accountability and transparency in the use of resources to ensure the benefits of this autonomy are felt by all. Earlier, we were joined on the news by Judge Ashiru, Public Affairs Analyst.
Local government autonomy is a definite part of our constitution. It's something that we should have practiced right from 1999 when the constitution was perfected and elections were held for a new democratic dispensation. Fact of the matter is that when you have a democratic dispensation, which is starting anew, there's going to be a lot of, there will not be necessarily seamless movement, osmosis of ideas and practice in terms of implementation. And that's what we got. We got a sense that the federal government did not know how to devolve power down to the state and the local government, and then states did not know how to do the same. But see, we've got 25 years back off of that. And by now, I believe that every tier of government should have known that this is what the Constitution intended, that every tier of government should have as much independence as possible, so that the delivery of the democracy and also the benefits to the electorate can be felt directly by the people who are electing these tiers of government. So for us, this is definitely the way forward, but there's still a lot of issues that need to be resolved, but definitely it starts in the right direction.
Thank you for staying tuned. The Islamic Movement of Nigeria has held a procession to mark the 2024 Islamic Day of Ashura despite a police order urging them to discontinue their walk. The Federal Capital Territory Police Command, in a statement by the spokesperson, Josephine Ade, banned the procession, saying it has in the past disrupted public peace. The members who held the procession from the Wuse Market down to Bega roundabout said The work is to also stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine, calling an end to the bloodbath going on in Gaza. Security agencies were mobilized in full force to disperse the procession, but members of the movement had rounded up the exercise before they arrived. The Nigeria Labour Congress has issued a stern warning to the National Assembly, threatening a month-long nationwide strike if plans to deregulate the national minimum wage are approved. NLC President Joe Ajaero made the announcement in Lagos, saying the move would grant state governors the powers to determine wage, effectively abolishing the minimum wage. Ajaero emphasized that organized labor will not accept a situation that forces workers into poverty. He stressed the importance of equal pay for equal work, regardless of location, citing the constitutional provision for equal pay for equal work. The NLC is urging the National Assembly to reject the proposal and ensure fair wages for all workers. The threat comes as negotiations for a new national minimum wage continue. And now to security update. The Edo State Police Command is urging citizens to disregard a viral video circulating on social media, which appears to show separatist groups issuing eviction ultimatums to herders in the Igboho area. Police Public Relations Officer Adewale Osifeso says the video is a deliberate attempt to incite violence and disrupt the peace in the state. According to Osifeso, no eviction notice has been issued by any individual or group, and the police are working to prevent any unrest. In the meantime, the Oyo State Commissioner of Police has deployed additional personnel and resources to the area to ensure the safety of all residents. Residents are advised to remain calm and ignore the misleading information. President Bola Tinubu has directed Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, to swiftly end oil theft and vandalism in Niger Delta region and ensure optimal national oil production. Mele Kyari, the Group Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, announced this directive at the Defense Headquarters in Abuja following a meeting of all security chiefs and intelligence agencies. Kyari emphasized that achieving the desired economic stability is impossible without curbing oil theft and other crimes in the Niger Delta region. General Musa assured Nigerians that the result of harmonized operations of security agencies would be evident within the next 2 to 3 months. He stressed the importance of community cooperation, highlighting that pipeline vandalism and its associated hazards directly affect local populations. And to unpack this, I am joined by National Industrial Officer, Pengasin, Dr. Eze Ifeanyi. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
All right. Let me kick off by asking, how does Pengasin, view President Bola Tinubu's directive to end oil theft and, of course, vandalism in the Niger Delta region within a short time frame?
You know that Pengasin, as an association associated with oil companies in Nigeria, we are always happy when we get such a signal. But then we know too that this is not the first time we've been getting such signals. But we are excited. We are happy if we can follow it through as a nation.
Well, like you rightly pointed out, that this is not the first time you are getting such signal or directive. What impacts do you foresee this directive having on national oil production or even output levels?
For sure. If this directive will be carried out, we know that it's going to increase our production. We've been producing below even the OPEC quota, the amount of crude that OPEC has asked us to produce. And having in mind that crude oil is the major earner for Nigeria, that's really mind-boggling why we are not doing all we can to actually make sure that we produce enough. We are looking at 70 to 80% of our income coming from this sector.
Well, not talking about crude, just to bring to bear, we understand refinery in Port Harcourt as well as Kaduna will soon kick operations. Looking at August, December for each of them. What's your perspective on this? Is it workable? Do you think it's something we can achieve in terms of them kicking off operations and ensuring we have our refineries up and running once again?
Yeah, from the feelers we are getting from our members who are involved in this turnaround maintenance, is possible that that can come to fruition. But bearing other exigencies, somehow we have a lot of complexities in this country, but we are optimistic that that will happen.
Let me ask you, in your opinion, how feasible is it to achieve significant result, say within the next 2 to 3 months, as assured by General Christopher Musa?
Yeah, we can if we are serious about it, and there is a collaboration.
Apologies for butting in there. When you say if we are serious about it, what do you mean?
Yeah, what I mean is that we've had ultimatums like this in the past, and it never achieved the desired end. So it's for us to plan well now, because we are looking at technology. What extent of technology do we have? Because for us, technology is in thing. Do we have drones, for instance? Do we have satellite imaging? Those are the things that we should have that will actually help us. Yeah, I know that manning manually with people around the pipeline and the facilities, yeah, it can help. But when we have things like these monitors that can actually give us real-time signal and information, it will be good. But I wouldn't know how much the armed forces are prepared, so I won't preempt them.
It's interesting you touched on technology and also satellite surveillance. What other challenges do you foresee for Pengassin, in implementing the president's order effectively?
Yeah, aside technology, we are looking at the community too. What is the perception of the community as regards to the law enforcement agencies that will come to their community now to work? And how the law enforcement agencies are going to carry themselves? These guys are there. It's their community. They know all the nook and crannies of the community. They can assist. But most times, you have this frosty relationship between the law enforcement agencies and the communities. But we think if they can improve on that and try to help them, like in terms of welfareism, make sure they provide certain things for them, because when somebody is hungry, he's always angry, and you may not get the best out of them.
Now, talking about synergy or cooperation or collaboration, if you may, between security agencies and, of course, local communities to strengthen or curb oil theft or vandalism, what best approach would you recommend?
Well, the best approach is that the law enforcement agencies should try as much as possible to incorporate the communities. If they can pick up the able-bodied guys in the community and employ them in whatever role they can play, that will help. And at the same time, too, they should be able to give them some corporate social responsibilities, try to give out things to the community, develop the communities, and let the community, let them be happy. Because most of the times, some of this vandalism can occur when the people are not happy. Then again, for instance, all the people that have been dealing with a coal fire, for instance, all this crude way of refining oil, you mean if they have employment in any of these oil companies, you think they will go back to do that, knowing the hazard they face on a daily basis? They won't.
Now, for Pengassin, what role can they play? What role can your body play in supporting the government's efforts to eradicate oil theft and ensure optimal production?
Yeah, we have a major role to play. It's multifaceted in nature. You know that apart from the government getting the money, the workers in the oil industry are the next beneficiaries. So bearing this in mind, for sure, we should actually be able, and which we've been doing, to let our members who are working at some positions that can give us information or give the law enforcement agencies information to continue doing that. We will educate them and let them know the consequences of doing the right thing and make sure that the companies are doing their job ethically and at the same time, like I mentioned before, and take care of the community where they are in.
All right, thank you so much for your perspective on the news, Dr. Eze Ifeanyi, National Industrial Officer for Pengasin. Many thanks once again.
Thank you too.
The investigative panel set up by the federal government on the collapsed two-story building in Jos, Plateau State has released a preliminary report on the sad incident. The two-story building housing Saint Academy, located at the Busa Buji community in Jos North local government area of the state, collapsed on Friday about 8:30 a.m., claimed 22 persons and left about 154 trapped persons who were evacuated to various hospitals. Director General of the Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, Professor Samson Duna, said a report of the panel, headed by Professor O.F. Job of the Building Department at the University of Jos, showed that the physical observation of the building looked distressed while weak materials were used for the building. He said a report also depicted that the quality of the concrete used to construct the building was in doubt, as there was no boundary between the concrete and the steel reinforcement. Thank you for staying tuned. German Foreign Affairs Minister Annalena Baerbock says Niger Republic will no longer have cooperation with the German military due to a lack of trust in relations with the military regime. This was made known in a comment during a visit to a nearby Côte d'Ivoire, and Germany already announced on July 6 that it will end operation at its airbase in Niger and pull out its remaining 36 troops by August 31st. Nigeria has been run by a military regime since the coup d'etat in July 2023 and ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, who has been held as a prisoner ever since.
Zugleich unsere humanitäre Hilfe für die Menschen nicht eingestellt, weil die Menschen, auch in Niger, das Sie angesprochen haben, können nun am wenigsten für diese Situation, und wir sind auch für die Menschen da. Und auf der anderen Seite haben wir erlebt, dass wir gerade auch mit Blick auf die russische Rolle in Mali oder jetzt auch in Niger mit der Unterstützung, die wir zuvor im Sicherheitsbereich übernommen hatten, sei es im Polizeibereich als auch im Ausbildungsbereich oder in der UN-Mission MINUSMA, nicht so weitermachen können, weil die Verlässlichkeit, die vorher da war, nicht mehr gegeben war.
Nous souhaitons que ce pays soit aidé dans la mesure du possible. Donc plan humanitaire, car les populations en ont besoin. Et nous avons évoqué aussi les risques que cela pose à la Côte d'Ivoire, surtout à la frontière nord. Comme vous le savez, nous recevons déjà plus de 60 000 réfugiés du Burkina, et ceci est un poids pour l'économie ivoirienne. Nous avons pratiquement, au cours des 7 dernières années, triplé le nombre d'entreprises allemandes en Côte d'Ivoire. Ceci, donc, on ne peut que s'en réjouir.
The United Nations says talks between the UN envoy and delegations from both warring parties in Sudan are continuing in Geneva this week, with its focus on humanitarian aid and protecting civilians. War has raged since April 2023 between the Sudanese Regular Army under Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the paramilitary rapid support forces led by his former deputy, Mohamed Hamdan Daglo. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' personal envoy for Sudan, Ramtin Lamanra invited delegations from the Army and the RSF for talks, which began on Thursday.
The Sudan crisis is the worst displacement crisis in the world now, with around 13 million people displaced. Over 10 million are internally displaced populations, and over 2 million are seeking refuge in neighboring countries, including Chad, that hosts over 700,000. The main reason they left Sudan now is hunger, is famine. And this is the main reason why they left. They said it's not insecurity, it's not lack of access to basic services, but because we have nothing to eat there.
What I can tell you is that the personal envoy of the Secretary General, Ramtan Lamhamra, and his team had several interactions.
Armed groups clashed in a seaside town outside the Libyan capital, killing a woman, a bystander, and sowing panic among beachgoers. Emergency services and media reports said the fighting erupted in Tajuru, a town 20 kilometers east of Tripoli, which is popular with families seeking escape from the heat of the capital. The clashes broke out after fighters of one armed group detained a member of a rival group. A myriad of armed groups have vied for control of the North African country ever since a NATO-backed uprising toppled and killed longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Still ahead, Bangladesh authorities shut down schools amid deadly demonstrations. We have details shortly. Join us again. Thai police on Wednesday said one of the 6 foreigners found dead from a suspected cyanide poison in a luxurious Bangkok hotel likely also carried out the crime. The bodies of 6 people of Vietnamese origin, 2 who held American citizenship, were discovered in the suite in the Grand Hyatt Erawan Hotel in the tourist center of Bangkok on Tuesday afternoon. The deputy commander of Bangkok police said officers are convinced that one of the 6 people found dead committed this crime. He told the news conference police believed that the cyanide was used as a poison and the motive for the crime was thought to be related to debts worth millions of baht. Schools and universities across Bangladesh have been shut until further notice after 6 people were killed in protests over quotas in government jobs. University students have been holding rallies for days against the system of reserving some public sector jobs for the relative of war heroes who fought for the country's independence from Pakistan in 1971. The students argue that the system is discriminatory and they want recruitment based on merits. Several cities, including the capital, Dhaka, this week witnessed clashes between supporters of the anti-quota movement and their opponents, particularly the student wing of the governing Awami League known as the Bangladesh Chatara League. And for more on this, I am joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, glad to have you, join me. What's the reason behind this protests?
Well, these government jobs that you speak about are highly coveted because they are very well paid, some of the best paid jobs in Bangladesh, actually. And like you so rightly said, these have long been held for relatives of people who fought in the uprising in the war for independence against Pakistan in 1971. Other jobs are held for women and ethnic minorities. And so students are saying that they don't have a fair chance to be able to get these well-paid government jobs because they are reserved for certain groups. Now, this system, they say, unfairly benefits the families of pro-government groups who get these jobs and who supports the Prime Minister. Now, she won her 4th straight election in January. And actually, this reservation of jobs for these people was actually abolished in 2018, but it was reinstated in June of this year, hence these protests breaking out.
But then how have so far, how has the government responded?
Well, the government have blamed opposition groups for starting these protests. They say that these protests are not about the jobs, and it's just a way of the opposition of having an uprising. And this week, several cities across Bangladesh, including the capital, Dhaka, have seen these anti-government, anti-quota movement protests coming out on the streets, attacking each other with bricks and sticks, firing tear gas and rubber bullets into the crowd. Those have been fired by police, and students have returned fire. Student activists have said hundreds of people have been injured, and some have even been killed in this violence. Students saying that the police have not intervened to save ordinary students, but they have intervened to save people from their own side or to save people from the government. 3 people have been killed in a port city of Chittagong and 2 in Dhaka as well. And so the government are saying, look, this is all about the opposition causing this uprising and trying to unsettle and unseat the government.
Now, what would be a lasting solution, Afia? I mean, what's likely to bring this damaging and deadly protest to an end?
And that's what a lot of people want to know. So look, this quota for jobs was abolished in 2018. It was reinstated in June of this year. But Bangladesh's top courts actually removed the system last week because of the protest, but it's likely that the protest will continue until the move becomes permanent. There's a case listed for August the 7th, and students have been given the opportunity to state their case in court at that court hearing. So I think until there's a permanent solution and the government permanently says that they're going to get rid of this quota for jobs, then these protests unfortunately will continue and also could get worse.
Well, thank you so much for bringing context to this. Afia Hagen, our international correspondent. Many thanks. In business, the federal government is seeking the assistance of the World Bank to provide funding worth $50 million to support state government for the installation of solar plant pilots and infrastructure upgrades. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, spoke on the initiative when they met with World Bank delegates in Abuja. The minister said the program would ensure the rollout of 3.5 million prepaid meters to enhance power distribution and support tariff frameworks, market reforms, and co-financing the transmission company of Nigeria's performance improvement plan. And I am joined by President, Nigeria Consumer Protection Network, Kunle Olubio, to talk about this. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me. Okay, seems my guest is having a hard time connecting with me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, I can hear you. So let me kick off by asking, what do you make of this fresh move by the federal government seeking $50 million loan from the World Bank to improve the country's power sector? I mean, having in mind past borrowings haven't yielded positive results.
Well, particularly, I'm just listening to the components of the funding of company of Nigeria. Some of us, we have reservations, but having said that,
we lost you for a bit there. If you can take your thoughts again.
Yeah, talking about the funding from World Bank is just expected to be complementary to the domestic budget funding for the power sector. As you're aware, that very recently the National Assembly approved a funding window for the metering, which is close to about 600 to 750 billion naira. And so our major concern is that a lot of money have been raised in the past for the purposes of funding of the power sector. And the question now that readily comes to mind is that such funding should not be structured as a largesse. There should be a model for cost recovery of such investment, because at the end of the day, the body is going to be transferred to the electricity market. And so moving forward, there's nothing bad in securing evolving fund, but such money, the meters that will come in bulk buying from original equipment manufacturer should come at a lesser price, because you can get from the Shell international market a three-phase meter for between $50 to $70 or $100 at maximum. And if you take that by the exchange rate, you are going to have like about 15,000. 150,000 if I'm right, for a three-phase meter. And the three-phase meter, meter at the moment is selling for $220,000. Naira per three-phase meter. And the vendors or the meter assembling company, they are equally still asking for 360,000.
If I may come in there,
such meter that will be funded should not be given for free, but it should come at a relatively reasonable and competitive price.
If I may come in there,
pay for such loan, the distribution companies should refund us by way of energy token.
Mr. Olubio, if I may come in there, apologies for butting in. You've raised a number of cogent points, but then what would you say is the reason the sector has not performed optimally despite privatization? What needs to be done?
Yes, in the past we've had the issue of conflict of interest and completely definition of weakness of regulatory ecosystem. There was a competition between the BPE and NEC without a clear-cut direction. The BPE incursion into post-privatization regulations, similarly, which was not obtainable in the telecom sector, created a role for BPE being regulator in the daytime and contractors at night. That power has been taken back to Ministry of Finance Incorporated. Now we have a clear-cut direction, and NEC is now in charge. Regulation now, depth of monitoring and evaluation has been the bane. If you discuss from here to tomorrow, the bane of it has been serious or huge gap in regulatory ecosystem. That has been the major. Talk about liquidity, talk about non-adherence to service level agreement, talk about indiscipline in fiscal and governance structure. It's all boiled down to depth of regulatory assertiveness. But now with the passage of Electricity Act, NEC have been further strengthened, and we are beginning to see a paradigm shift in that direction.
And that's a fine place to leave it. I'm pressed for time. Apologies for butting in, but thank you so much for your perspective on the news. Kunle Olubio, President, Nigeria Consumer Protection. Many thanks once again.
Thank you.
In sports, Nigeria's Quadri Aruna and Egypt's Omar Osar have been seeded in 14th and 16th places respectively in the men's single event of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, meaning they will start their campaign in the second round. According to the International Table Tennis Federation, the seeding was based on the world rankings released on Tuesday, which saw Aruna retain his 19th position in the world just as Osar is ranked 22nd. Nigeria's Olajide Omotayo will know his first round opponents when the draws take place on the 24th of July. And that's all on the news. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. Tahir Monguno replaces Ali Ndume as Senate Chief Whip. Abuja High Court voids impeachment of former Deputy Governor Philip Shuaibu. Female bystander killed as armed groups clash in Kajura town. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba.